Once you've started drinking better coffee, it gets harder and harder to go back to drinking that stuff your old Mr. Coffee is brewing at home. We wanted to know if it was possible to find an automatic drip coffee maker that would brew the kind of coffee you'd pay for in a coffee bar, rich and full-bodied, smooth and delicious. We bought 8 coffee makers and tested them to find out. First, we chose models that all had thermal carafes because we know that the hot plate under a glass carafe can start to turn good coffee bad within minutes. They all looked great with interesting features like a reservoir to preheat the water on the spun machine, or the pair of commuter mugs you can brew right into in this Hamilton Beach model. Most of the machines let you program the time you want the coffee to automatically brew. A few of the most expensive ones even have an attached burr grinder, such as this $199 model from Cuisinart, and this one from Capresso that's a whopping $300. But here's the trouble. We made coffee in each of these machines with freshly roasted beans, and we tasted them blind. And by and large, the coffee was just as weak, flat, bitter, and boring as coffee makers used to make 10 or 20 years ago. In this age of Starbucks, how can manufacturers get away with this? It's simple. They know you're not going to get to taste the coffee before you buy. So they dress the machines up to look all sleek and pretty on your countertop and give you lots of bells and whistles and fancy features you may never use. But the heating element, the heart of the coffee maker, is the same old heating element coffee makers have always had. They want to make the price of the coffee maker as attractive as possible, so they cheap out on the most expensive part. The heating element's important because roasted coffee beans have more than 1,000 volatile flavor and aroma compounds. And when you're brewing coffee, you want to extract only the ones that have good, full flavor and leave behind all the bitter, bad-tasting ones. To do that, the water needs to be heated to a fairly narrow range of between 195 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit, and it needs to get through the beans within about 6 minutes for a drip coffee maker. We tested the coffee makers over and over, checking the temperature of the brewing water as well as the finished coffee, timing the brew cycles, and the bad coffee was suddenly explained. Most of these machines took several minutes to get the water up to the right temperature, but they were still pumping water through the beans all that time. A few of them finally reached the right temperature, but then they kept climbing, getting too hot. And most of them didn't get anywhere near close to the ideal time of 6 minutes to brew a pot of coffee. Only one model, the Techniverm KBT 741, really zipped up to the right temperature in seconds and stayed there, getting all the water onto the coffee beans within 6 minutes, though it took another minute and a half to completely drip into the carafe. That model's coffee, no coincidence, also rated head and shoulders over the others in our tasting. And we discovered why. It has about 1,400 watts of power compared to about 900 watts for the other machines. That extra power gets the water going fast. It also has a much more expensive copper heating element, not the usual aluminum. Copper, which is much better at transferring heat than aluminum, gets it to the right temperature right away, not gradually like the other machines. It's also very simple to use. No fancy bells or whistles. The downside is you have to pay more for that more expensive heating element. The Techniverm is handmade in the Netherlands, and it sells for about $240. If you just can't see spending that kind of money on a coffee maker, we also recommend the Bodum French Press, which sells for about $39.95. While you do have to heat up the water and check the temperature yourself, it makes comparable coffee for a lot less money.